So I gotta say, right off the bat, this was a very well-paced chapter. It was very nice and like fluid. We got to cover so much in just one chapter, and I'm glad once again that the pace is starting to pick up and we are having so much information stuffed into just one chapter alone. It makes it so much more fun for me to review, and I do hope this continues in the future because it gives us so much more to work with. But all praise aside, there was some very deep information in this chapter that leads us to many new possibilities. We learned that Judge used to work with Vegapunk in a research group. But now that I think about it, it was kind of obvious and right in front of our faces all along, because we do know that Vegapunk is sort of like the center of all scientific knowledge, and anything new that kind of happens in One Piece regarding science, Vegapunk has some involvement. So we also know that Judge has some knowledge of lineage factors, or DNA, I assume. So this could have heavy involvement with how the Germa 66 army is basically formed, and it also tells us how the exoskeleton and the genetic mutations within each of the Vinsmokes kind of works, I guess. So because Judge has knowledge of lineage factors, or DNA, it would mean that each of the Vinsmokes are of course genetically modified. That has been stated already. So this could also mean that Reiju, for example, instead of being a butterfly fruit user, she's actually just merged with a butterfly. She's like a butterfly hybrid. I think there were some theories in the past saying that she had a zone fruit, but now it's pretty obvious that she can just use the powers of a monarch butterfly via the genetic mutation, and that is how she can digest and basically use poison. Butterflies store poison in their body, and that is why she is named Poison Pink Reiju. Now, it's hard to say if it's the same for the other Vinsmokes. For example, Niji, he can use the power of electricity. So does he have the power of, say, an electric eel? Or is this electricity generated using Haki or some other factor that we don't know about? Obviously, it seems closely tied to the exoskeleton or the genetic mutation, but it would be interesting if the Vinsmokes have some level of Haki within them that would double their power. But of course, Sanji seems to be mostly relying on Haki and such to sort of match the Vinsmokes in terms of their exoskeletons. I had seen an idea earlier on that maybe Sanji had developed his exoskeleton later in life, and that is why he is so strong right now, but I kind of hope that doesn't happen because Sanji right now is relying a lot on Rokushiki and sort of other abilities that are more spiritual, like Haki. So it would make sense if his abilities are more natural, and while the Vinsmokes are more reliant on technology. So if Sanji could beat them using his own powers within them instead of the lineage factors and the exoskeleton, it would kind of prove the whole point that, you don't need all this technology to make you a better or stronger person. There is also the whole idea that maybe Sanji's Diable Jambe, or his whole Hell Memories attack, is fire generated from the exoskeleton, I guess, or the lineage factors that were sort of changed within him at birth. So it's hard to say if that is true or not, or maybe this whole Diable Jambe ability is simply a power of his own, and once again, that could be how he fights the Vinsmokes, using sort of more spiritual powers or more natural powers. And speaking of fighting the Vinsmokes, it still feels from this chapter that Sanji is almost always on the losing end of the fight whenever he fights with somebody in the New World. This was like the 4th time that we've gotten a fight with him where it ended off with him sort of being, I wouldn't say humiliated, but just sort of beaten down, and he doesn't really come back at all. So I know at some point he is going to come back and redeem himself for all of these fights, but it does seem to be piling up with all of these sort of losses in a way. Like while Luffy's over there using Gear 4th, fighting all of these top tier guys, and while Zoro's just kind of making a fool out of like Pika, it does feel like Sanji is getting almost no credit at all, and everybody's just making fun of him. Everybody's saying that Sanji's weak and he's never going to get a good fight. And if he doesn't get a good fight within this arc, I will also be very disappointed. I was hoping that since this is like the year of Sanji, he would get some kind of, good fight in the process, hopefully against someone who is like top tier. And I imagine he will fight against one of his brothers, or maybe Judge, and he's got to win, or at least come very, very close to winning, to where it seems like Sanji can indeed handle the New World alongside the other Monster 3. But as far as Reiju was concerned, a lot of people were hating on her last chapter. They thought that Reiju actually beat up Cosette. I didn't personally like this theory that much because I do feel like Reiju is a little bit different. She helped Luffy out, and she has done a lot of nice things for people, so she is obviously very different. And in this chapter we saw that even as a kid, she was a lot kinder than the other Vinsmokes, and that she was the only person to really help out Sanji, and when she did laugh at him, it was all pretend to keep herself from being hurt or ostracized, I guess. And poor Sanji, man, this is probably what made him so cold and hard later on in life, on top of his training with Zeph. But I do feel like this is what made him hate men so much, and it's what makes him love women, kind of, because as we saw, Reiju would always treat his injuries, and the maids obviously were probably very nice to him, but the guys, you know, his brothers and his dad, Judge, were very, very cruel to him. They locked him in a cage. Judge, quote unquote, killed him. Didn't really kill him, but basically made it so that nobody knew he even was alive anymore because he was just so shameful. And in a way, this is like part 2 to Sanji's whole sad background and story. I thought Sanji had one of like the top 3 saddest stories, with just starving on that island for so long. It's really, really rough. And on top of that, now he's got all this to pile up onto that. I mean, he has a very, very rough past, and like Robin and Brooke, for example, they were sort of left alone, sort of just ostracized, thrown out like trash. And when I first heard about the Vinsmokes and Sanji leaving them, I had originally thought that Sanji was the one who cut all the ties, and he was the one to sort of disconnect himself from the family. But it turns out that the family was sort of the first one to cut all bonds with him, and then he just ran away from there. So that's really rough. But tell me what you guys think. Did you really enjoy this chapter like I did? And do you think we will indeed get a better fight for Sanji in the future, maybe against Ichiji or Niji? What do you think is going to happen? Tell me in the comment section down below, and I will see you all next time.